Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong. I am Mark Ellis, but she's back in the States after a whirlwind trip to the Cannes Film Festival. Jacqueline Coley, you're back in the home office. How was Francais?
Daunting, but fun. It was a very busy trip. Anytime you're trying to see 30 movies in a small amount of days, it's always going to be a little bit, but who could complain when your job is to watch movies, and more appropriately, who would listen? So I'm happy and glad to be back.
I saw pics from the hotel, folks, and it looked like a very nice palace that Jacqueline was staying at with a very, I will say, productive happy hour. So that's I'm glad you had a good time, but I am always happy that you are back next to me doing this show, because today we get to talk about, I'm going to go ahead and say, one of our all-time favorites, right? I mean, you think about the movies in this guy's filmography, and it's like we grew up with this stuff, and that would, of course, be Adam Sandler. He's got a new movie, Hustle, coming out later on this month, where he plays a down-and-out NBA scout who's on his last legs, hoping to find the next great prospect overseas. But today, we get to welcome in director and actor Mark O'Brien, who's got a new film, The Righteous, streaming June 10th everywhere. It's a really, really cool horror movie, getting great reviews, 90% on the Tomatometer thus far. And we're talking about a guy who maybe the Tomatometer doesn't love quite as much, because Adam Sandler, his average for comedies is 28%, and his average for his serious quote roles is just fresh with 61%. The audience score is improved for his comedies. That goes almost to fresh, 56%. But so we have like your Billy Madisons, your Big Daddies, Happy Gilmore, the Waterboy. We're going to talk about a lot of those, and then some few other ones I want to highlight as well when we get Mark on the show here. And again, it's so exciting to have a guy like that who he's an award-winning actor. You've seen him in Ready or Not, Blue Bayou, and then season 2 of Perry Mason on HBO Max. But he also has The Righteous coming out sooner rather than later. So, Jacqueline, before we welcome Mark and we get to 2 minutes with Tim, just if I ask you, hey, Adam Sandler movies, go. What's the first kind of, not movie, but thought that pops into your mind?
Regardless of their reception or what people think of him, I think he's having a good time.
Man, you and me would have been such a good team, like back in the 80s making video jackets, because I could have written like the quick description, and then you could have put like the critic quotes in there, and like we would have gotten a lot of rentals back in the prime of Blockbuster. But for now, it's our own Blockbuster talent. Tim Ryan is our expert review curation manager, and he does his segment 2 Minutes with Tim, which tells us what the critics were saying at the time of a film's release, or hear how the critics feel about one Adam Sandler. Take it away, sir.
2 Minutes with Tim.
Ingmar Bergman is one of cinema's most important and influential figures. With masterpieces like The Seventh Seal, Wild Strawberries, Persona, and Scenes from a Marriage, to name just a few, Bergman expanded the medium's emotional and visual boundaries to previously unexplored dimensions. After his death in 2007, Bergman's house on the Swedish island of Fårö became a shrine to the great director, and if you visit, you can see his DVD collection. There you'll find, nestled between dozens of timeless masterpieces, is a copy of Anger Management. In other words, everyone's got a soft spot for the Sandman. Of course, whether you prefer the serious dramas or the goofy comedies, or if you love them all, there's no doubt Adam Sandler has had a fascinating career, and the critical response to his films is all over the map. So right now, for the sake of the show, we're going to run through some of those personal favorites. Billy Madison from 1995 is rotten at 41% with 49 reviews. The Waterboy from 1998 is rotten at 33% with 75 reviews. Big Daddy from 1999 is rotten at 39% with 93 reviews. In terms of the critics, the best reviewed Adam Sandler movie is The Merowitz Stories, New and Selected, which is certified fresh at 93% with 188 reviews. His worst reviewed film is The Ridiculous Six, which is rotten at 0% with 36 reviews. So what did the critics have to say about those two? In a fresh review of The Merowitz Stories, Gregory Wakeman of Metro wrote, "The Merowitz Stories are the ultimate proof of the acting heights that Sandler can reach, as he embodies the pent-up aggression, frustrations, but indomitable spirit of Danny Merowitz in an increasingly rich and inherently hilarious fashion." However, in a rotten review for The Ridiculous Six, Justin Chang of Variety wrote, "The scenery ain't bad, but the laughs are tumbleweed sparse in The Ridiculous Six. A Western send-up so lazy and aimless, it barely qualifies as parody." So that's Adam Sandler. And I would say that's that, Mattress Man. Back to you, folks.
And as promised, we are now joined by director and one of the stars of the movie, The Righteous. This is Mark O'Brien. Mark, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show talking about someone who we all grew up with, right? This is Adam Sandler, and we love him dearly as a person. The Tomatometer, not quite so much. First of all, how are you doing? Thank you for being here.
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here. Like anyone, I think, in our rough age group, we don't need to reveal numbers here. But yeah, Adam Sandler is a part of my DNA. I love talking about him. And he's all over the board, man, on the Tomatometer.
He really is, yeah. But before you got here, Jacqueline and I were talking about his overall averages, right? And so he's got his comedic movies, which he's known primarily for. Those films average 28.6% on the Tomatometer. Now, we get a little bit better. We actually get fresher with his serious quote-unquote roles. Those films average 61.5%, which just does get him into fresh territory on the Tomatometer. But I'm looking at the sort of list of movies that we all had emailed back and forth about, what we really want to talk about, why Rotten Tomatoes is wrong about Adam Sandler. Feels like we're going to have a comedy discussion here.
Yeah. It's a lot of comedy. Also, we can definitely talk about there is a skew against comedy on the Tomatometer. It's something that we talk about at Rotten Tomatoes. This is not to say that like we're rigging it, but by and large, comedic movies don't receive the same critical acclaim, and you don't even need Rotten Tomatoes to do that. How many comedies are nominated every year at the Academy Awards? It's kind of like goes in that same sort of mindset sometimes for what people view to be great. And so when a comedy rises above like a few of his, yeah, it means something.
Mark, I'm curious for you, even before we get to your specific Adam Sandler movie that you want to defend here today, when you just think or somebody asks you, hey, what do you think of Adam Sandler movies? Is there an easy answer you can give them, or do you have to get specific? Do you have an overarching sentiment about his filmography?
I do. But I think everyone's particular, if I were to ask someone else to not answer your question and go into my own question, which I'm apparently doing right now, if I were to ask someone else, what do you think of Adam Sandler movies? I would need to know their entire psychological history, where they went to school, how old they are. I need a blood sample because certain people from different walks of life, the first time I saw Punch Drunk Love, everyone was leaving the theater. So it's like, because they thought it was an Adam Sandler movie, quote unquote, and that was one of the first dramatic one. So it's such a confusing element. When I think of Adam Sandler movies, I generally feel excitement, because even if it's one I don't really want to see, Hubie Halloween, I'm still like, oh, he's doing silly stuff and he's having fun. It's like I'm happy for a man. I'm like, good for him, that $500 million man. Like, it's weird. We all like just want him to do well. I'm excited to see him doing anything. And it's a really weird sort of joy I get from someone I don't know.
You know, it's funny that Mark brings up our backgrounds, Jacqueline, because I think that Adam Sandler, when he first came on the big screen from SNL, sort of appealed to folks like me who were good at sports, but not as good as we wanted to be. And there's a lot of anger there. And how do you express your anger if you can't beat the other team all the time? You tend to act out like you would see in a movie like Happy Gilmore, which, again, I think criminally low in the Tomatometer, 33%. But nobody is here today to highlight Happy Gilmore as a film, although I think we can all champion that movie somewhat. So I'll turn it back over to you first. Mark O'Brien, what is the film that you see on the Tomatometer and you say, how could the critics have gotten that one so wrong?
It's Billy Madison. I mean,
yes,
it's Billy Madison. Like it informed my life to such a large degree. I walked by the other day, I'm shooting Perry Mason, and I walked by a crew member the other day, and he said, he was like, it was lunchtime. And he goes, we got some sloppy joes. And I said, lady is scaring us. And we started laughing immediately. And everyone was like, what? And it's not even a joke. That scene is not even funny, but it just hit a weird sort of zeitgeisty thing. And then and then as I walked away, he was like, condition on is better. And but here's the thing. Here's my argument on this. I was thinking about this a lot before coming on. I was like, I kind of get the critical reaction. I went back and watched it and I was like, this is weird, man. Like, this is a bizarre movie. However, here's where I think the critics are wrong. That it's an incredible setup. That is a great conceit for a movie. It's fantastic in its conceit. And all the little weird stuff was just really like 90s kind of SNL stuff.
Mhm.
So like the jokes that were like weird and conditioner's better and shampoo's better. Like that was kind of like weird SNL-y, sketchy type.
Kids in the Halls, actually, too. Like that very sort of meta sketch show. Yeah.
100%. And I just think that it's like, I think it's wrong. And I'm like, this is a wonderful setup. It's a breezy movie. It flies by. And you can't wait for him to go into the next grade, into the next grade, into the next grade. And I'll tell you, also, just because I'm excited about it, my favorite part of the movie is when he's sitting down at dinner and he's like eating his soup and he's like, eating it like a maniac. And his dad's like, Billy, these men flew like a long way. They don't want to miss their flight tonight. He's like, well, this guy can stay in my room. I'll tell you that much. And grabs his hand and starts biting it.
That's enough, Billy. Because you took your own sweet ass time coming down here tonight, these gentlemen are going to miss their last flights home.
Well, this guy can stay in my room, I'll tell you that much.
That's my favorite part of the entire movie. Anyway, I think it's a beautiful conceit, and it's actually kind of heartfelt. And I think when you actually lay it out of what it is, like structurally, it's kind of perfect. It's sweet and beautiful and coming of age.
I have good news for everyone because this is actually the most well-regarded film that the three of us are highlighting today, because Billy Madison is all the way up to 41% on the Tomatometer. So Jacqueline and I have movies that are even lower than that. But sticking with Billy Madison, the conceit works because he's just this man-child who's been spoiled his whole life. And now in order to pursue any one of his dreams that he has, however ridiculous they may be, including taking over his dad's company, he has to have a high school diploma. And so he just has to start back through kindergarten and just make sure that he passes each grade. And that gives so much opportunity to have these little ridiculous things that make no sense in any other movie. I think of Josh Mostel's principal character, who is just... he's just there, but then he also becomes this wrestler, the revolting blob. And then I also think of one of Billy's friends who, for no good reason in the movie, during one of his graduation ceremonies, is just spraying a kid with a hose. And that's it. And the kid is just saying, I don't even know you. What are you doing? And it just gets to this weird, psychologically dark place that we can all laugh at.
And Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang are at his graduation ceremony. Like, why are they there? They're there time. Like, it makes no sense that they've shown up at all. And then when they go on the pee your pants thing, and then why is Chris Farley the whole thing? He's like, that Veronica Vaughn. Like, his character does not need to be in the movie.
I feel like that is testament to your earlier claim that this was really just a lot of silliness that you would see in a wacky SNL sketch in the 90s, because as we know, the SNL in the 90s, everyone would do whatever they could to work Farley into a sketch somehow, because he was just that brilliant comedically. And so it's like, if we need to have him as this creepy school bus driver that just shows up randomly, and I think that set the template for the future Sandler movies and other films where it's just like, let's just get Farley in this thing somehow.
Yeah, it's meant so much to so many people. When we did Ready or Not, we shot at the mansion that they shot at.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, and you know when he finishes a conversation with his dad, and then he just dances down the stairs to like some kind of Moroccan kind of vibe.
Yeah.
When we went to the house and I'd heard, I was like, oh my God, the house is the Happy Gilmore, or is the Billy Madison house? And I went and I saw the stairs, like, that's the stairs. And I went up and I did the dance down to one of the other cast members, and I was like embarrassing myself. And a bunch of crew members were walking by, like, what the hell is this stupid actor doing? And then about a half dozen guys were like, yeah, I did that when I came in.
Wow, because they recognized it. That's kind of cool.
I guess that's a great question for you, Mark and Jacqueline, too, is like, how is that movie? It's one thing to say, well, yeah, it's a funny movie and it showed that Adam Sandler can carry a film, even if it's very juvenile and sophomoric, but how has it managed to stay in our cultural zeitgeist? Like you said, this might be the most quotable Adam Sandler movie. For me, I will quote Norm Macdonald at the beginning when he says, this is the greatest night of my life, when they're just, lighting poop on fire. The best quote in that movie, and the one that I think is one of the most brilliant lines I've heard since I became a comic, is when Billy has to defend the book that he read. at the debate, and he's talking about the pup who lost his way. And he goes through this whole thing, and we think it's just going to be this big sappy, he wins off of this argument. And instead, the ruling is, we are all now dumber for having heard that. It's so brilliant. How has it lasted?
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
That is the part of it that doesn't get talked about in this movie, is all of the straight men, or in this case, Veronica Vaughn, straight women, who make it work. Whenever you have absurdist comedy like this, you have to have like a lightning rod of like straight facedness. And for this one, it was Veronica Vaughn. Like in later movies, sometimes the girls are crazier than the dudes, you know what I mean? But in this particular one, Veronica's the level-headed one. And then just moments like that where somebody is like, did we just see what we just saw? And who's the corporate guy who's trying to take over the company away from Billy Madison? Huh?
What's his name? Bradley Whitford.
Bradley Whitford, thank you. Reprising his entire role from Revenge of the Nerds again. Basically, that guy grew up, right?
Yeah, the one thing nerds could always hang their hat on is like being more educated than everyone else, is being able to articulate how they're feeling more than the bullies. But now the nerds have all the power in Hollywood, which is great news for all of us. But if you
right, like it is stuck with us so much. Like, do you know how often I'm sitting next to someone and they say something to me, and I'm in a group of people that's relatively quiet. I always say, "No, I won't make out with you." It just comes out. It's just like It's like saying you're welcome or please. The thing I just normally say. So I don't know. Like, what do you think, Jacqueline? I don't know the reason why it's stuck.
This was also a time when like teenagers had huge, I would say, pop culture influence that was in the mainstream because it wasn't relegated to the internet. Now with the internet, what kids are about, it's like you have to be on the right platform, follow the right artists to really even know, and they're allowed to niche themselves in a way different way than they did. I mean, just think about it. Think about it now. NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, that was like Today Show material that they were talking about the war between these two pop bands. And now you have to be a band as big as BTS for people to even understand who you are. Like the relevant versions of that. And so I just think it has to do with the fact that at that time, teenage culture or young adult culture was pop culture. And so when we look back on that time with nostalgia, it's not like it was in the 70s or 80s where it was way more what the mainstream were about, and it's definitely not the way it is now where it's so underground. I think that's why it stuck with it, is because at that time, this was comedy. What Adam Sandler did was an entire genre of comedy. SNL was an entire genre of comedy. And so if you just liked comedy at that time, you're gonna kind of be a fan of these things, and that makes it stick.
Well, and you're right. And he has maintained his status and his stardom so that people go back and watch it.
Exactly.
So they're like, oh, everyone's all these people who are 10 years older than me are talking about Billy Madison so much. Like, I guess I should watch it.
That's also his characters too, because you look at somebody like Billy Madison, who you'd never want to hang out with in real life, or even Happy Gilmore, because he can just fly off the handle at any minute. But we like those characters intrinsically for some reason, and so even when they have their meltdowns, we root for them. And I don't know if Adam Sandler and Mike Myers ever had these conversations. I don't know if they ever like even hung out at SNL, but I think that Sandler movies owe a debt of gratitude to Wayne's World, because when that movie hit, it was like this new, every group of teenagers wants to rebel against what the standard was before them. And so whereas in the 80s, you had these huge comedy movies that were a little more family skewed, like with Bill Murray and Ghostbusters, or with Tom Hanks films, or Eddie Murphy. Now it's like, no, this is our generation movies that our parents might be like, there's no story here. This is just a bunch of nonsense. But I think that is sort of like the way that grunge music came in around the same time. It's just something that was different and that felt like they had ownership over, you know? And I think it stems from that.
There's also something interesting too of like, I'm trying to think of I'll say Steve Martin. It's a bad example, but it's not a terrible example. That guy's been doing comedy for forever. I love Steve Martin. But when Steve Martin, if he's not funny in something, you almost feel like he's such an intelligent comedian who's been so old school too in a lot of ways, like him and Martin Short when they do their live show, which I saw once at Greek Theater, was amazing. But it's so old school that if he falters, you almost feel bad for him. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, it didn't work. Whereas Adam Sandler, you're like, yeah, he's just screwing around anyway. Like, you laugh it off. So you're like, who cares about Jack and Jill? He probably thinks it's silly too.
And he's cultivated that persona a little bit from like just the way that he navigated everything. Like, I don't think he's ever navigated things with that more than just like, I just want to hang out with my friends, make the movies I want to make. But if you're careful, you'll see the things that he cares about. Like, really cares about. Because if you look at it, he has a special production company he uses only for his auteur stuff. And that's what he used to produce Uncut Gems. That's what he used when he was a producer on, I believe, Rain on Me and Funny People. And not saying they all worked, but... And now this new movie that he's about to come out with, Hustle, is also produced by that same banner. And so, like, it goes to show you where he sees himself.
So Uncut Gems is 92% on the Tomatometer. However, what's funny about that, the audience score is only 52%, which makes it rotten. And so the audience score currently for Billy Madison is running laps around Uncut Gems. It's 79%. And so I think that a lot of that shows how much of an influence that this movie had, not just over us and a generation, multiple generations for that matter, but it also sort of set the template for what was to come with Adam Sandler films, where it is going to be him, but it's also going to be a gaggle of his best buds. And they're just going to figure out a premise to make a movie, which is where we get to with 1998. And the movie that Jacqueline wanted to gush about today, which I'm just going to say is 33% on the Tomatometer. If our listeners and viewers want to guess real quick, Jacqueline, you may pull the veil.
Pull the veil on why it's 33%, or just on the movie. Yeah. So Waterboy, this is a little bit different for Adam Sandler because he plays this Waterboy for a local football team, the Gators in Florida. And basically he is Rudy, but if Rudy was obsessed with water and had a slightly offensive speech impediment, like, you know, he's doing like his crazy Cajun thing. But yeah, he's the local Waterboy, and they find out basically if he gets angry, he has the hitting power of a Mack truck. And so he gets pulled off of the sidelines as the Waterboy and onto the field, much to the dismay of his mother, played by the great Academy Award winner Kathy Bates, and to the delight of his girlfriend, played by the so crazy in this edition, Fairuza Balk. This is also why I said, like, sometimes the women in these stories end up being way more rails off. Both the women in Waterboy are way more rails off. And you have Rob Schneider coming in with his now iconic but slightly infamous catchphrase of "You can do it." But it's a great film. I love this film. It's actually has a special place in my heart. I didn't tell anyone about this, but my dad actually worked on all the Adam Sandler films as a caterer. That was his first gig in Hollywood. He was a caterer. He worked for Gala Catering, and then he became a driver later. First black man to be a part of the union, the driver union here in LA. Yeah. Wait a minute though. So this movie holds a special place in my heart. I actually went to this set. I got to see them film it, and it was filmed at a university. I want to say it was in New Orleans, but don't quote me on that one. It may have been actually in Florida. It could have. It's a Gator-like team, and the color scheme echoes a little bit of the Florida Gators. Technically, the name of the team, I think it's the Louisiana. It's in Louisiana, but the name of the team is the Mud Dogs. The Mud Dogs, and they filmed it. They filmed it in a Louisiana university. Anyway, so yeah, I went on set, and it was like a whole thing. And the one thing I will tell you is the testament to Adam Sandler, who I know doesn't love Rotten Tomatoes with all of his heart or whatever, but when I came to interview him for Uncut Gems in Toronto, not only did he remember my dad, but his manager did. Because, because again, these guys always work with the same people, the same folks over and over and over again. And my dad did, I want to say, like 8 movies with him. Click, he did he did Click, he did Waterboy, he did The Longest Yard, Mr. Deeds, he did that one too. So yeah, I would just say again, it's interesting because I think his reputation, not to put any shade against Mike Myers, but as people started to hear the stories about the fact that, hey, Dr. Evil was robbed from Dana Carvey and some of the stuff that came out after The Cat in the Hat, that's when people started to be like, maybe this guy isn't so nice. And I don't know if anybody else has seen, but did anybody know that Mike Myers has a movie right now out on a TV show? No. You know why? Because nobody cares. But everyone knows about Hustle. They know about Adam Sandler's next thing because he's just somebody that his audience has always wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I think if you are that person, no matter what you do, you can make another haunted mansion or whatever it is, haunted murder mystery movie. What was the name of that one? Murder Mystery.
Halloween.
Yeah, no, Murder Mystery. Literally the simplest and stupidest title in the world. Put Jennifer Aniston or Drew Barrymore in it and he's there. And we didn't even talk about his incredible rom-com run too. Like I really, like I was going to do 50 First Dates, but I had to do Waterboy.
I thought about 50 First Dates. I think it's really good. Waterboy, I like too. Because it's kind of almost like, you know, like Rudy for Adam Sandler. Like it's enjoyable because you know he's going to get on the team and you know he's going to get good, which is always fun. And you're going to see him exude his anger onto other people, which we already know is the persona of Adam Sandler. That's what he does. He's going to be like, what? Like he's going to do all that.
Yeah.
And you want to see it. So it's just exciting. It's almost like watching when you see, you know, the shark in Jaws. You're like, I can't wait till he starts sacking people.
Yeah, exactly.
When he first does it and stuff. I just want to say a couple of quotes I love from it so much. Was Henry Winkler is phenomenal in that movie. Yes. And when he says, remember when he flashes back to one time he was really upset and he's wearing heels and the phone is not plugged into the wall. Anyway, and then he's about, you just remembered at that moment. Yeah. And it's so good. And he's like, yeah, that didn't work out very well for me. And then he's like leaving the house and Kathy Bates is so good in it too. And he's like, you know, Mama won't let me play. And then he goes, when I was younger, I wanted nothing more than to get a Roy Orbison tattoo. And Mama wouldn't let me. Let me tell you something. What Mama doesn't know won't hurt her. Then pulls his pants down and has a Roy Orbison tattoo on his ass.
Yeah. And apparently that was Henry Winkler's real behind too.
Are you serious?
Apparently that was really apparently like they did like the stencil for him. Also too, not the only movie that he did with Winkler. I think Winkler came back for like 2 other films. I know at least Click. Winkler's in Click, yeah. Yeah,
and Lawrence Gilliard Jr., who plays the kicker in The Waterboy, which is another phenomenal role, and he's sort of like the best friend character to The Waterboy, to Bobby Boucher. He was quoted as saying that Henry Winkler was just everything on that set. And I came across The Waterboy at the exact perfect time for me to love it in my life because I was a freshman in college. And it's still during that bonding session where you're just getting to know this new group of friends that you'll probably take with you for the rest of your life. And we're all, big sports fans. Football season's in full swing. So we all pile into, don't try this at home, kids. My friend had a truck. And so there's like 8 of us in the flatbed going to the movie theater. And we see Waterboy. And we're just quoting it and laughing our asses off on the way home because I don't necessarily think it's a movie for everyone, but my God, did it. If you were a freshman dude in college, you loved seeing that movie. And it also set the template for something that I think was maybe a little dangerous. And maybe it was some of Adam Sandler's future misfires were the result of The Waterboy because he talked very different in The Waterboy. He was doing this ridiculous accent. And I think that because he got away with it so well in The Waterboy, it's like, oh, I can do Little Nicky and talk like that the whole time. I can do I can do Jack and Jill and play a character named Jill.
Also, his comedy albums. People forget Adam Sandler had a huge run of comedy albums like that he did, like Stan and Judy's Kids. They're all gonna laugh at you. Yeah, Voices all the way through. You can't and those were like mega hits. So I really think he just wanted to keep pushing that forward, right?
Sort of the same version of something. Like they're all like the same kind of world. And I think, Ellis, I think you make a good point where it's like once that happened, because he was kind of playing a character. When you look back at the performance, I still can't decide if I think it's a great performance or not. I don't know. It's so weird and sort of like committed. Well, it is committed, but it's also like, does this work?
It doesn't need to though, because it doesn't need to because again, you look at so many of his films and it's like, oh, it's this. It's like, okay, so Big Daddy, this is Annie, basically. Yeah. You know what I mean? Right. He just takes all of these other, I would say, simple premises from other movies, and all he really does is dress them up with this Adam Sandler man-child sort of like wandering through.
There's 2 things I want to say. I have to quote another one that I realize now I use in everyday life too. Like when he reads a note on over at the water table or whatever, and it says "eat and kill yourself," and he goes, "Not exactly what I call constructive criticism." I always say that if someone's like jokingly being really mean to me, I'm like, "No, not exactly what I call constructive criticism."
I really do like that one so much. Actually, mine that I do have, because I am definitely this girl, not with like men in my life, but the other women in my life, that Fruza Balk thing where she's just like, you want me to kill them? That is me. That is me. You cut off my girl in line at the bathroom or like said something shady out in public. Like I'm literally like Fruza Balk being like, you want me to kill them? Because I will.
And now I want to go to the very next year. Chronologically is my movie that Jacqueline hinted at earlier, and that's Big Daddy, which is 39% on the Tomatometer. And I feel like this movie, you can easily be a critic and poke holes in something like Billy Madison or even The Waterboy. I feel like Big Daddy, Rotten Tomatoes got that so wrong on the Tomatometer, because I feel like that is a genuinely good comedy. I think it's a sweet movie. I think it's sentimental without being sappy. And there's a lot of Adam Sandler isms in it, but it also shows that that character in that film could have been Billy Madison. That could have been Happy Gilmore. Maybe Happy Gilmore burned out on tour. Maybe Billy Madison decided he didn't want to take over his dad's company and he wanted to move to the city. That could be that guy. And we're seeing the evolution and the maturation of Adam Sandler, sort of realizing I can't quite keep doing the same exact thing. If my humor was sophomoric before, I at least need to now be an upperclassman in high school as I progress in my career. And so this movie where he just literally finds a kid on his doorstep and he ends up having to raise him, it's a little Three Men and a Baby for a new generation that I think sorely needed some life lessons in growing up. Me realizing this would be my sophomore year in college, that I love Billy Madison, but you can't act like that doofus forever. But you can sort of try to base your 20s on a character like we see in Big Daddy.
Yeah. No, hey, look, yeah, the maturation is there. Called it.
You just sold it to me. I'm not a fan of Big Daddy.
Really?
I wanted it to be funny. I wasn't ready yet for his. If Big Daddy was directed, I mean, that's probably one of his regular directors, like Doug Dubin or Doug.
Dennis Dugan at the helm there.
Yep,
it's always like Stephen Brill. It's always like one of those guys, right? I think if I knew if that was like a P.T. Anderson at the time, I would have been like all in. I think I wasn't. I was the people who walked out of Punch Drunk Love, but it was three. I wasn't ready yet, so I was like, "This movie's not funny."
Me too.
You just sold it as in like. I know that movie pretty well, and I'm like, it is a really sweet movie. It's really, really sweet. And you're right, it was like a nice move for him to. It was probably what helped him move into Punch Drunk Love like 3 years later. Like it's like, it was going in that direction for him of like, oh, I could like capitalizing on what he's done before, that persona.
Yeah. And the courtroom scene, Jacqueline, when we have this custody battle that we've been leading towards, it's the perfect combination of some real actual drama and emotion there, but there's also ridiculous comedy with Steve Buscemi, who is always great, whether he's putting on lipstick in Billy Madison, whatever he's doing in an Adam Sandler movie. And here he plays this homeless guy who hangs outside of McDonald's, who they recruit to be one of the key witnesses in this trial for whether Sonny should be able to get custody. And the old guy is there who's that just hangs out with him at the bar to watch the Jets game. Like, it's so preposterous, but it works.
Yeah, it definitely does work. Also, at that time, I have to thank this movie for so many things. First of all, it gave us the Sprouse twins, which I was a Riverdale fan and just a fan of Dumois and Celebrity Gossip. Those two are like a lifeblood. They always bring a little bit of the drama, so I like that a lot. I mean, honestly though, too, just the idea that Adam Sandler could have a movie like that. I was trying to look it up, but I believe at the time, Siskel and Ebert still reigned supreme as far as critical reception. And if I recall correctly, one of them liked Big Daddy. And I'm pretty sure it was Ebert, but like, don't quote me on that. But one of them hated it and one of them liked it. And I wish I could have figured it out. But there were people who I think got what Big Daddy was going through. The thing I think that sort of had its Achilles heel is so much of it was just like ridiculous stuff. Like the kid won't shower. Like it's just like, it's like this man should not. And the setup of the plot is strange. Like that guy drops that kid off the next day. Like no way that guy all of a sudden decides to be this thing. And there's not any way that the teachers didn't report him 10 seconds after he came to school saying that he wanted to call himself Frankenstein. Like Child Protective Services would have been notified
and
way
all he
quicker.
Eats is a plate of ketchup. That's all he wants to eat.
Like nobody is letting this child be alone with this man for so many more reasons than just how bad he is as a parent. Like let's just put that out there. But I get it, man. I would not in any way say that it wasn't great. My favorite is like Leslie Mann, again, playing like the straight, being like, quit being a jerk. Like just her hatred of Adam Sandler in that movie is like one of my favorite things.
I opened my eyes to her in that movie.
Yeah, like it's gonna get infected. That's why you don't scratch, dumbass. I love it so
Here's
much.
my question. With Big Daddy and Waterboy especially, how do you think they would play today? Like if they came out today and Adam Sandler's in them, he can, even if he's the same age, even if it was like, 30s, late 30s, Adam Sandler or whatever. I
mean, I don't
I still
know
feel
if
like Big Daddy works. I feel like Big Daddy works.
Waterboy doesn't and Big Daddy does.
Yeah, I think Waterboy doesn't because of like obvious reasons. But I think Big Daddy does with some careful adjustments.
Yeah.
Like you just have to remove the thing that was never really talked about, which is this idea of like, this is a grown ass man with a child he doesn't know. And you have to just set that up in a premise where there's a little bit more protection, like an aunt or an uncle. You just have to change the dynamic. It cannot just be some random child that was put on his doorstep.
It needed a little massaging, let's be honest.
Yeah, a little massaging. But other
let's
than
also
that,
keep
yeah.
John Stewart in there. Let's also keep John Stewart as the actual dad who kind of bookends the movie. And yeah, it really was a movie that I think a lot of guys who were in my position in life at the time who loved the juvenile sense of humor of Adam Sandler films. But then that movie put us all in a position where what if some responsibility in our future, whether it's as big as having a child or a pet or even just getting a girlfriend, which would have been news to me. It's like maybe we do have to show a more mature side of ourselves than just being Stifler from American Pie all the time, And so I think it was a formative movie for me anyway.
It's funny you say that because as we go through these movies, because you sit down and sometimes think about certain people's work in chronological order, and like as movie people, like I do that all the time. Like, oh yeah, then they did that movie, then they did that movie. He kind of was like we were watching him progress as a human, like through all these movies. If you really like look at it chronologically, almost completely from day one, from Airheads to Hustle, like it's been sort of a version of his life in a strange way, or the personas that he's played we've watched them grow up. And maybe, like I'm just thinking about this now, maybe that's why he's so important to us, because we've watched him evolve before our very eyes. Almost
Airheads. Criminally underrated too. I caught it on TV a couple weeks ago and it still holds up for me. Another great Farley cameo, 25% on the Tomatometer. Maybe a little more well-deserved, where they take over a radio station so they can get their band played. But that's Brendan Fraser coming off of Encino Man.
Yeah.
Steve Buscemi's in. Like, there's some
Steve
Joe
Buscemi
Montana.
Has one of the greatest I'm doing the wrong thing at the wrong moments in that movie, which is at the end, spoiler alert, they go to jail for their efforts, as they should. That's the other thing about that movie.
Very fair.
And he's playing in jail, and he's like doing the like, and he's like making love to the guitar, but it's an all-male prison, and everyone just looks at him like, you don't really know what you're doing right now, do you? And it's like one of the greatest moments ever of like, he's just like, I have committed to something that I did not realize. Like just, you don't know what you're saying when you're saying this, sir. And it was like, I just love that nonverbal thing because it's literally like over the credits, one of the best jokes in the movie.
Can I throw in an honorable mention? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'll really quickly. I loved Meyerowitz Stories. I thought he should have been nominated for that as well as Uncut Gems. I absolutely, I thought he broke my heart into a million pieces in that movie. And I mean, there's so many other movies of his that I like. Like he's made so many. Most of the comedies I don't end up going for. But one of my honorable mentions, A Wedding Singer is fun. Like, of course, I love John Lovitz in that movie, and Steve Buscemi in that movie as well. But That's My Boy. I thought.
Oh yeah. Really good. Was that Sandberg too, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And that's when it was like almost like a passing of the baton, but that didn't really end up happening. The reason why I like it is because for a long time, I think, Adam Sandler was a very young kid. So he was doing kind of like, Mr. Deeds Goes to Washington or whatever. He was doing all these kind of like safe and sweet movies, Hotel Transylvania, whatever the hell all those movies were. And then all of a sudden he did an R-rated comedy again. That's My Boy, I feel like, was his first R-rated comedy in a number of years at that point. And he is cursing up a storm. He is playing the Adam Sandler, the grown-up Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore character, but we hadn't seen it in 15, 16 years or whatever. So I remember going to the theater. I was like, I think that looks really funny. I'm actually going to go see it in theaters. And I died. I thought it was hilarious. It was everything I wanted. And I actually thought it was going to be a big hit. And it wasn't really. I think it did okay in the end. but critics, it was brutalized. And I was like, I don't get it. Isn't this what we've all been waiting for? And I felt like it just kind of went under the rug.
No, I mean,
go ahead, I agree with that.
If I can have an honorable mention, I just want to say Spanglish.
Yep.
This is James L. Brooks.
Which is 54% on the Tomatometer, which is very curious. I was shocked that movie wasn't fresh.
I really love that movie. It's a very simple movie. It's very much within James L. Brooks. The guy that makes As Good as It Gets, it's kind of hard for him to come back with something like Spanglish, which is still good, but in no way as satisfying a film. But man, I love that movie so much.
I'll give a shout out to a fresh movie that is also what Mark had hinted at earlier is The Wedding Singer, which is 69% fresh. And it's also because as somebody who watches Adam Sandler movies and can clearly tell he is a master appreciator like I am of Van Halen, that's got such a great Van Halen reference because the movie takes place in 85 and his ex-girlfriend is wearing a Van Halen t-shirt and he's like, take it off before you jinx the band, and they break up. It's a pretty good line.
Oh, wow.
Pretty good line, and I've used that myself.
Sweetest moment of any, because he when he's so sweet, he breaks your heart, right? And the song at the end, "Come On, I Want to Grow Old with You," is the sweetest. I've listened to that song. I sang that to an ex-girlfriend.
Yes, you did.
I learned how to play it on guitar and sang it to her when I was like 19 or 20 years old, and she was very impressed.
Hey.
Oh, look at you!
I wish there was video of this somewhere. We could.
It was throttlingly terrible. I think she just, felt bad for me. Whatever. It's weird. She broke up with me about a week after that. She broke my guitar over her knee when she did it, which was really unnecessary.
That's rock and roll.
She did not.
That's rock and roll, baby. What do you expect?
She did not do that.
Hey, as long as you didn't let her wear your Van Halen t-shirt, we're all good. We could all talk about Adam Sandler movies all day as we've displayed here, but I do want to put some shine to just the filmmaker. Now, in addition to acting, that we have here as our special guest here, Mark O'Brien. You have a film that really took me by surprise called The Righteous, because I'll be honest, I didn't know what I was getting into with this, and what I got into was just a delightful horror trip. I'm a big horror movie fan, and The Righteous really, really grabbed me and did not let me go. Where does, when you're making a film like that, and you're also in the movie, by the way, what are some of the challenges that you faced making that you hadn't previously encountered in your career?
Well, I had to watch The Waterboy a lot. That was, I had to stay up late. That was a challenge. There's only so many hours in the day. Honestly, the biggest challenge is just putting it together. I find that I don't understand that as well. And maybe it's because I'm more of like a creative. I don't know like the paperwork. So when you're just trying to convince people to let you do it, really is the thing that I honestly, I hate. I despise it. Because you're basically begging. And I don't have any problems with begging. I'm an actor. But I just don't like to do it. If I know I'm going to get it, then it's fine. But you're always in a questioning thing. But when it comes to shooting, I actually found it pretty smooth because I knew my movie really well of what I wanted to do, for better or worse. That doesn't mean it's like when we finished, I was like, that's the movie I wanted to make. I don't know if it's good or not. That's subjective to someone else. But I knew the story I wanted to tell. So when you're acting, it kind of just, it makes the process a bit more fluid and a bit more streamlined because I know what I want from that. And I'm an actor. That's what I do for a living. And I think some actors sometimes can be a little coy and be like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. I was like, well, I wrote it. I know I can do it. Just like, someone goes in and plays guitar on a track, they know how to do that. That's what they do. So I was like, I felt comfortable with that because I wrote it. If I didn't write it, I don't know if I could ever direct something I didn't write, but especially acting it as well, I would find that weird because it's not my voice. So the whole thing was my voice as one. So that helped.
Jacqueline, that's the best answer I've ever gotten asking a question like that. And I'll tell you why. It's because that's what frightens me about any endeavor I'd have to direct anything. It's not getting on set and telling people what to do and how to tell the story. It's the paperwork. It's the legal. It's the red tape. Once you get there, it's like, okay, now let's do our fun little barnyard production now that all of the lawyers are out of it. That's honesty right there.
No, it is honesty. It's actually the opposite of mine because the blank page is the most terrifying thing on the face of the earth, in my opinion. But I can deal with paperwork. I grew up in bureaucracy. Mark, I've talked to you about this film before, which I think is so great. But I want to set it up for folks because this was a choice, not just in what you chose to do, but how you chose to do it from like the black and white setting. So just set up the story for us a little bit. and how you wanted to do it in the sense of like, I know you used friends and family members, like you did this in like your little hometown. So yeah, give us a quick log line of The Righteous and then why you brought it all the way back to, I'm going to say the place where you're from badly, so you do it for me, but it's very small community. I know that.
The way you wouldn't expect it to be pronounced. It's not Newfoundland. It's not Newfoundland. It's Newfoundland.
There you go. See, this
Whatever
is why
you
I didn't say
couldn't
it.
possibly be pronounced like that.
Yeah, Newfoundland. There we go.
I don't know
Thank
what we were thinking when we named it. Like I was there in the room when that happened. So it's really the log line is a burdened ex-priest feels the wrath of a vengeful God after he's visited by a mysterious stranger. So really, it's a lot of, I wanted to take the preconceived notion of like, a stranger in the house kind of thing and then turn that and twist that and also twist genre a lot because that's what I love as a filmmaker. And Jack, we've talked about it before about like, I love Michael Haneke and stuff, and I like people who you don't know what's coming next. And I loved Aronofsky's Mother, for example. Like, I love that. Now, the foundations of where I was really inspired is more back to like Fritz Lang's early movies and
oh wow, yeah,
Dreyer. Like that's really where it came from. But I wanted to twist that in a way. And I grew up in Newfoundland, and I'm a proud Newfoundlander, and I go back when I can. But I live in LA. It's across the continent. But I wanted to go back there for a number of reasons. I wanted to work with the people I know and love, who I grew up with, because I think you get a better product when you're working with people you like and enjoy being around. Even if they weren't talented, and they are, but even if they weren't, it's still gonna be a better product than working with jerks who are talented. So I had the best of all worlds in that way. And I also felt like I'm so proud of where I'm from, and I was so supported there. Like it's, to come from Newfoundland and to be working in LA is not an easy thing to do. You need a lot of support, and that the community there really supported me and supports everyone. And it meant the world to me. So I just wanted to not like go back and pay it back. This was a tiny movie with no budget, but I just wanted to be there and be a part of that community in making it. And then outside of that, aesthetically, like I the one problem I have with movies that are set in Newfoundland, because there are some, like, there's a couple dozen. It always has to make a point about being in Newfoundland. And I'm like, you don't need to. I'm not one of those people who it's like the city is the setting. I actually like No Place, No Time, because when you say this is set in New York, 1988, you immediately have associations. I don't want associations. I want to create a world that is human and real, but we don't know where and when it is. And I think, so growing up in Newfoundland, I'd see these movies set in Newfoundland. They always had to have an accent. They're always fishing and stuff. And I was like, why can't I just use the way Newfoundland feels for me, which is cold? And it's kind of like nature is very alive there in a figurative sense. It has like it's kind of like mysterious and a life of its own. And I was like, that works. The setting for this works for this film. So rather than just set a movie where I'm from, I was like, why don't I use the feeling of where I'm from? And that meant a lot to me. So there were a million reasons why I wanted to go back and do it there. And we had the best time. We shot 15 days. That's all we had. We had 16, and we had to cut a day, 5 days.
Wow.
I had 7 days of prep spread out over 4 weeks. I was shooting Blue Bayou, and I went from New Orleans to St. John's for 4 days, went back to New Orleans for 2 weeks, then came back for 3 days, and then started shooting the fourth day. So we had no time and no $650,000 Canadian, but we all were having a good time. And that's why it was good. I think that's why it was a good experience, I should say.
I mean, and it is. Look, I want to give you your praise here. It's being released on Arrow. It's already 90% on the Tomatometer. Well on your way to certified fresh, sir. And we'll get that to you as soon as we can.
Wrapping everything up here was sort of a fun fact that I learned really quick before we say goodbye. Because we were talking about the artistic choice that you make when you're making a film like The Righteous. Did you know that one of the original concepts for Jacqueline's movie, The Waterboy, was to have it set in 1950s New England and make the movie in black and white? That was one of the original concepts for The Waterboy, and it is still make it a comedy, but still take it in a different direction where it's like sort of those Ivy League college football rivalries, and it would have been a different movie.
That's when Michael Haneke was attached to director.
Mark O'Brien, you're always welcome at our reindeer games.
Yes!
It was such a pleasure having you. The movie is The Righteous, and it's available streaming everywhere as of June 10th. And I'm seeing the critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes here. They're calling it one of the best horror movies of the year, and I would certainly co-sign that endorsement. So congratulations. As we say goodbye here, do you have any movie or TV show in addition to obviously The Righteous and some of our favorite Adam Sandler movies that you want to highlight really quick? We usually get a streaming recommendation from our from our lovely ketchup crew members here.
Or something in general.
In general, or what that you're working on. Also, I want to make sure we shout out 61st Street, which you guys just did the finale last week, right?
The finale, yeah.
Yeah, so if folks haven't caught that, they can definitely catch that out. But yeah, anything you're watching, anything you want to shout out?
Oh God, what? Oh. You know what? I'm really into the Columbia Noir Blu-ray, that Powerhouse Indicator.
Yeah.
There's a great one that's totally under the radar with Edmund O'Brien that I'd never seen called 7-Eleven Ocean Drive. I'm obsessed with those old noir movies, and some of them are kind of like all the same. They're like, just turning them out. That one is phenomenal. 7-Eleven Ocean Drive with Edmund O'Brien. It's like
I'm going to check that out.
Mark O'Brien, it was a pleasure having you. Please come back soon. Anytime you feel like chatting movies, we're always here for you.
I would love it. Thanks so much, guys. This is so much fun.
Thank you. See you next time.
See you guys. Thanks again.
It's always fun having guests on here because inevitably Jacqueline has known them and interviewed them and interacted for years prior. And so we kind of have a soft landing. But I mean, Mark O'Brien was so much fun to talk to. And he's just one of those guys, you just feel like you've known him your whole life.
I will say that was one of the reasons why I there's a lot of folks that reach out to us to be on the podcast, if I'm being really honest, amongst folks we know. But when you have a filmmaker or an actor like Mark, 10 minutes after talking to him, you're like, yeah, I just want to talk to you more.
If you have any suggestions as far as movies that you want us to talk about, guests you'd like us to have, hit us up. Email us at rtiswrong@rottentomatoes.com. And sometimes we'll even read your emails on the air. If you're listening to us, make sure you subscribe, review, do all that good stuff. If you're watching us on a streaming program like Peacock, thank you for your support. So for Jacqueline Coley, our special guest, Mark O'Brien, and his new film, The Righteous, Producy Lucy, Brian Perez, Tim Ryan, our entire team here at RT is Wrong. I am merely Mark Ellis saying thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. A slibbity-doo.